In the snow-covered expanse of the north, beneath a mantle of silence, lay hidden the invisible threads of fate, poised to unravel in the shadows of the long winter. Torkel, a solitary hunter, sought nothing but seclusion in the forests and mountains, where the icy wind whispered familiar melodies to him. He was a simple man, yet endowed with exceptional marksmanship and a soul living in harmony with nature. His name, known only to a small circle of villagers for his hunting prowess, did not resound among great warriors. However, much like the very land he inhabited, he awaited something more, an event capable of awakening his true potential. Everything changed the day coastal pirate ships appeared on the horizon. These were not mere raiders, but a threat capable of destroying everything Torkel held dear: his village, his lands, his peaceful life. The danger loomed over them like an approaching blizzard, merciless and inevitable. Torkel could not stand by and watch the encroaching chaos. The hunter, whose days were spent in hunting and trading furs, faced a choice: witness ruin or take fate into his own hands and defend his home. What began as a simple act of salvation would unfold, testing his skills and courage, pitting him against ruthless enemies in the wild. Torkel did not yet know he was about to be drawn into a conflict far beyond ordinary territorial disputes. The war between powerful jarls, the brutality of pirates, and the struggle for survival in a harsh world would force him to transcend his hunting abilities. He would have to change, confront his doubts, and perhaps become something more than just a hunter. His name would become a symbol of courage and the fight for life, not only for his village, but for all those caught in the icy grip of the north winds. In ancient times, when the shadows of the mountains and the piercing winds of the frozen plains shaped the destinies of those who dared to live in these lands, Torkel was born. His seemingly simple name soon became a symbol of something profound, something that could only emerge from the icy heart of the north. He was unlike other Vikings whose eyes burned with a thirst for glory and wealth, and he bore no resemblance to the fearless chieftains who ruled with an iron fist. Torkel was a quiet legend, a man forged by the cold and solitude of the vast lands he called home. His origins were not tied to great feats or epic tales of blood and conquest. The son of simple peasants, Kella and Berna, Torkel grew up in a small village hidden among valleys and dense forests. Majestic trees shielded his home with a protective shadow, as if nature itself sought to grant him a peaceful yet challenging existence. The village was small, with only about 50 inhabitants who lived by hunting, fishing, and rudimentary farming. Life there, though modest, demanded strength and perseverance. The villagers were like the land they tilled, resilient yet silent, with a deeply rooted pride that made them invisible to the outside world. From an early age, Torkel was a quiet child. While others gathered around campfires to recount tales of great battles and conquests, he preferred solitude, listening to the wind sweep through the trees or observing animal tracks in the snow. This very silence shaped him. He showed little interest in conversation, and when he did speak, his statements were brief, as if his mind cared more for actions than words. This made him a recluse, an unusual Viking who sought neither recognition nor glory. He saw himself as a simple hunter, living by his own rules, far from the bustle and pride of the tribes. However, Torkel's mastery with the bow and arrow did not go unnoticed. His talent for hunting and his accuracy soon made him a respected figure in the village, even though he never sought it. Every shot he fired seemed to reflect his deep connection to the land. No beast could escape his vigilant gaze and steady hand. His destiny lay not on battlefields where blood mingled with mud, but in the silence of the forest, where life and death were decided by a single misstep. He was a master of hunting deer and wolves, but also of something more, maintaining the balance of nature. Torkel knew nothing of the grandeur of great battles. His world consisted of long days filled with animal tracks in the snow and the pursuit of deer. In his youth, he could wander through the frozen forests for weeks, testing the unknown and returning not only with meat and furs, but also with a sense of quiet pride, a pride that needed no display. He did not use his strength for boasting or his knowledge of the wild for personal gain. He helped when necessary, but always with the simple aim of ensuring his village's survival. And in doing so, Torkel became more than just a hunter. He transformed into a vital part of the whole, an unnoticed shadow working for the village's well-being. However, Torkel's fate was about to change drastically. He could not have imagined that his honed skills and reserved nature would be subjected to such harsh trials. A small neighboring settlement, known to him only from afar, suffered a sudden and brutal attack by coastal pirates. These ruthless sea raiders were strikingly different from any Torkel had ever encountered. Their war cries and bravado usually heralded swift and bloody victories. These pirates had not come for conquest or glory. Their aim was total annihilation, leaving nothing but ash and ruins in their wake. And Torkel, with his coolness and the skills of an experienced hunter, found himself compelled to act. He had never been a warrior, but circumstances forced him into a transformation, turning him into something he never thought himself capable of. The first clash with the invaders occurred on the very outskirts of the village, where the pirates had already begun plundering homes and capturing peaceful villagers. Torkel, his eyes as cold as Arctic ice, did not hesitate for a second. He uttered no war cries and made no dramatic gestures with spear or bow. He attacked with the same flawless precision that had brought him renown among the few who knew his name. His strikes were lightning fast, lethal, and almost silent, like a wolf stalking under the cover of snow. In a matter of moments, he struck down 2 pirates attempting to assault peasants working in the field. This was no epic battle, full of grand speeches and heroic clashes. Simple survival was at stake, and he acted out of grim necessity. With each passing day, Torkel became more than just a hunter. He sought neither glory nor recognition, but circumstances relentlessly drew him into the epicenter of a battle far grander than he could have imagined. His deeds, though not of epic scale, quickly spread among the villagers. Soon, everyone knew that the solitary hunter was prepared to defend his home to the last, yet he did not consider himself a hero. For Torkel, the real struggle lay in remaining true to himself. A man of few words, unimpressed by the gleam of steel or war cries, but who perfectly understood the true cost of survival. In a world of powerful jarls and bloodthirsty warriors, Torkel remained a recluse. He never sought mention in sagas, nor a place in the songs and poems of skalds. But his skill, his silent resolve, and unwavering resilience could not go unnoticed. The hunter of the frozen lands would become more than just a legend. He would transform into the thin line between life and death, between survival and utter oblivion in a world where the eternal struggle never ceases. The icy expanses of the north were always more than just a land of hunting, survival, and fishing. Beneath the impenetrable white shroud of snow lay hidden not only harsh cold and piercing winds, but also other, no less dangerous forces aimed at seizing mountains and seas. The struggle for power among the jarls, the chieftains of warring Viking tribes, was a complex game of shadows, skillfully disguised as battles for honor and wealth. The northern lands were a coveted prize due to their strategic position, rich resources, and the prospect of dominating sea route. However, a sinister secret hung over the lands Torkel called home, a grim truth that, if revealed, could shake the fragile balance of power between the jarls and the entire region. The struggle for these lands began long before the pirate invasion, but their attack became the catalyst for a chain of events that threatened everything Torkel held dear. The Jarls were not merely rulers, they were avaricious power seekers, each striving to expand their influence on land and establish control over trade and shipping, two mighty forces capable of altering the fate of an individual or an entire tribe. However, Toral's land, with its small and isolated village, was more than just a disputed plot of territory. Its true value was hidden in the shadows, in something no Jarl dared to admit aloud. Yet all deeply felt, Toral's village was a strategically vital point for illicit slave trade. This grim and merciless trade formed a widespread network spanning the entire north, fueled by the destitution of dispossessed peoples and the warlike ambitions of powerful rulers. Toral's village, lost among the mountains and fjords, was an ideal location for clandestine and audacious deals between traders and pirates. When an influential person in a distant land required live cargo, whether for forced labor, bondage, or as a bargaining chip in a larger political game, they turned here. The village appeared quiet and peaceful on the surface, but beneath its icy veneer lay something far more sinister. This secret was meticulously guarded by a network of initiates, those who understood the price of survival in times of war and instability. The slave trade was not spoken of openly, but it was whispered among merchants, warlords, and those who knew how to exploit the weaknesses of others. Toral, though unaware of all the details of the trade flourishing in his village, sensed its ominous presence in every transaction, every exchange. He was always wary of dubious offers and the furtive glances he noticed on the faces of those passing through the village. But he was a simple man, and for him, the most important thing was to ensure his own and his community's survival. If that meant tolerating something as dark as the slave trade, he was willing to do so, but always with suspicion, never allowing himself to be morally tainted. However, this secret could not remain undisclosed forever. The Jarls, whose hands were already stained with many sins, learned of this underground trade network, but instead of trying to destroy it, they saw a lucrative opportunity, a way to increase their power and multiply their wealth. Those who dominated the seas, the pirates, were merely tools in their insatiable quest for even greater riches and influence. When Toral's village began to be seen as a key point for controlling this trade, it became a coveted target, and soon pirates formed a coalition drawn by the hidden value of the location. It was a frosty morning, one of many. Toral had left his native settlement in search of sustenance, delving deeper into the icebound lands. With the onset of a harsh winter, hunting became an increasingly difficult task, yet he was prepared for any challenge. His trusty bow hung on his back, his soul was calm, and his eyes meticulously scanned for nature's signs. He traversed the boundless snowy expanses, tracking wolves and deer, animals he knew almost instinctively. The silence of solitude did not burden him. On the contrary, it was his constant companion. The scent of the icy wind and the crunch of snow underfoot sounded like a melody he created with his own steps. His mind was free from the worries plaguing his village. While Toral hunted in distant, hidden lands, the pirates began to gather. They were a motley crew, composed of mercenaries, criminals, and adventurers, originating from all corners of the north, united only by a thirst for plunder and a lust for power. Their leader, the cruel and cunning Beyond the Avenger, had learned of the secret slave trade flourishing in Toral's village. He realized that by seizing control of the settlement, he could become the new lord of the frozen lands himself. Beyond assembled an entire army of pirates, promising immense riches and power to all who joined his cause. Each of his cutthroats understood that victory in this endeavor promised not only the chance to seize others' possessions, but also an opportunity to gain land, wealth, and, most importantly, status among the Jarls ruling the north. The attack began when Toral was furthest from home, a meticulously planned move. While the hunter roamed the forest, unaware of the impending threat, the pirates descended from the mountains and spread throughout the village. No one was prepared for such a treacherous assault. The inhabitants, accustomed to a measured life, could not even imagine that such brutality was possible. The pirates unleashed true devastation, plundering barns, destroying homes, and capturing everyone in their path. Upon returning to the village, Torkel witnessed a horrifying scene, his home settlement ablaze and cries of despair echoing through the surroundings. He saw flames consuming the homes of people he had known since childhood, those who lived alongside him and shared all the hardships of fate. Fury erupted within him, and the hunter, who had never held a weapon, became his land's last hope in the face of imminent destruction. He understood he could not stand idly by. He had to act. With bow in hand, Torkel moved through the snow-covered terrain with incredible precision and agility. Every movement, every breath, transformed into a deadly dance between life and death. The hunter knew what to do, how to strike to achieve maximum effect. The game of shadows had only just begun. He realized his village was merely a part of a much larger game, and now he would have to determine his own destiny. A man never considered a warrior was now forced to fight not only for his land, but for a future the invaders intended to rewrite as they pleased. The piercing wind lashed against the trees like sharp blades, and snow fell in thick flakes, painting everything in grim shades of gray and black. Torkel vanished into the boundless white wilderness. His steps became silent, and his senses sharpened to their limit. He transformed into something more than just a hunter, becoming a primal and lethal being. The cold was no longer his enemy, but an extension of himself. He moved across the snow with chilling calm, imperceptibly, like a snowflake falling in the night's silence. The battlefield was not a vast plain, nor blood spilled on sand, but an icy wilderness steeped in quiet. His objective was clear: to annihilate the pirates who had invaded his village and erase all mention of their existence. The pirate fleet, approaching the coast, represented a formidable force capable of sowing chaos and destruction. Spotting the ships in the distance, Torkel mentally prepared for the impending battle. These were not merely a few long ships, but a full-scale invasion. There were 6 ships in total, their long wooden hulls resembling sea serpents, their prows adorned with carved dragon heads. Each long ship carried over 30 pirates, originating from various corners of the north, exiled from their lands, or yearning for wealth and glory. It was a mix of seasoned warriors, mercenaries, and bandits, united by an insatiable hunger for plunder. Their faces were concealed beneath animal hides and furs, and their bodies were robust and resilient. A wild fire burned in their eyes, and their presence made the air around them vibrate with smoldering hatred. The pirate camp was set up on the fjord's shore, where the longships were moored. It was an improvised fortress, consisting of huts made of hide and wood, piles of stolen goods, and slaves guarded by armed soldiers. For Torkel, however, all of this was merely a target to be destroyed. He understood that a frontal assault would be suicidal. The pirates were too numerous, and their strength overwhelming. But Torkel was a hunter, and a hunter never charges head-on. Instead, he stalks his prey, waits for the opportune moment, and delivers a precise strike. He would be like the snow, descending upon the pirates suddenly and mercilessly. Shrouded in a fur cloak that obscured his outline and blurred his features, Torkel seemed a phantom, dissolving into the frosty mist of the frozen forest. He moved with the grace of a specter, treading silently upon the crunching snow as if merging with the surrounding stillness. His steps were almost inaudible, and his gaze was fixed on the slightest movement of the enemy. He slipped between trees, circling the pirate camp with astonishing precision, as if guided by an unseen hand. Every action was measured to the millimeter, every movement executed with deadly accuracy. He observed the pirates gathered around their fires, listening to their coarse jokes and boastful speeches, mentally marking each victim for inevitable retribution. He did not rush, knowing that time was on his side and patience his greatest ally. Torkel's first priority was to destroy the longships, understanding that this task required cunning strategy, not brute force. He took up a position in the shadow of a small hill, which offered a panoramic view of the battlefield. His gaze, like a scanner, surveyed the terrain, pinpointing vulnerabilities in the enemy's defenses. The pirates were relaxed, engrossed in celebrating their successful invasion and blissfully unaware of the approaching threat. Torkel knew that destroying the ships would cut off their escape route, leaving them no path to salvation. With cold resolve, Torkel drew an arrow from his quiver and nocked it to his bowstring. This was a special arrow, with a sharp iron tip meticulously forged to pierce any armor. He aimed at the first longship, his mind instantly calculating the distance and angle of the shot. With one fluid motion, he released the string. The arrow, cutting through the frosty air with a barely audible hiss, struck precisely its intended mark, the base of the first ship's sail, where the wood was most vulnerable. Moments later, the sail ignited like dry straw, but this was only the beginning. Torkel did not stop, moving like one possessed, quickly shifting towards the second ship, striving to remain unseen. Each of his movements was calculated, a deliberate dance, akin to the silence before death. At the second longship, he again drew his bowstring, this time aiming for the anchor ropes, holding the vessel in place. The sound of snapping ropes was muffled by the falling snow, but the effect was immediate. The ship began to sway precariously in the icy fjord waters. Another longship was incapacitated. With each arrow loosed, Torkel inexorably approached the camp's center. Acrid smoke from the burning ships billowed into the sky, and panic erupted among the pirates. Cries of surprise and terror echoed through the camp, but it was already too late. Torkel was already among them, moving like a shadow in absolute silence. He was no longer merely a hunter, but the embodiment of death itself, a specter come for the souls of those who had defiled his land. The pirates attempted to resist. Some frantically fled towards the boats, others desperately drew their swords, but their movements were slow and chaotic. Torkel attacked them one by one, his blades flashing in the firelight like lightning, striking enemies with merciless precision. He used the terrain to his advantage, hiding in the shadows of trees and delivering blows without the slightest delay. There was no nobility in his actions, only the cold necessity to eliminate the threat once and for all. In a matter of minutes, pirates fell dead, unable to comprehend where death had come from. It was a silent winter storm that consumed them. When the last pirate was vanquished, Torkel rose from the snow and gazed at the burning longships. The fire illuminated the fjord as if Helios himself had turned away to witness the bloody slaughter. The scent of burning flesh mingled with the frosty air, and the crackle of fire was the only music left after the battle. Torkel, a man who never sought war but was born a hunter, had transformed the battlefield into his own work of art, a bloody canvas of vengeance and survival. Having fulfilled his duty, Torkel did not linger. With the pirates vanquished, the ships ablaze, and the camp destroyed, he turned and vanished into the snowy haze, like a phantom dissolving into the pre-dawn mist. The hunter had completed his mission, but the war had only just begun. After the bloody carnage in the fjord, Torkel became a legend, though not one he had desired. The pirates who invaded his village turned to ash and corpses. Their ships burned to cinders, and their bodies lay scattered across the snow, a grim reminder of the price of aggression. The village, devastated by the invasion, slowly recovered but was never truly the same. Torkel's silence, which had always been his faithful companion, now seemed a heavy burden. He, who had never sought glory, had become a symbol of something greater than he could have imagined. The wounds of war were visible not only in the village, but also in his soul. The hunter who once roamed the forest in peace now found his heart forever stained by violence he never desired. Even after he annihilated the pirates and burned their ships, the war did not end with the last arrow loosed. This harsh Viking world was in a state of continuous struggle, and Torkel understood this better than anyone. He wondered if true peace existed for those like him, or if he was destined to forever remain a shadow in the frozen wastes, a solitary guardian protecting his land until a new threat challenged him. But there was something deeper Torkel had realized from the beginning. The true battle was not fought on the battlefield, nor in the clash of swords or the roar of long ships. It transpired within his own soul, in the necessity of finding balance between who he had become and who he wished to be. The war would no longer be waged on the front lines, but within his own mind, and perhaps this would be the greatest battle he would ever face. Over time, as news of Torkel and his exceptional abilities in defending his native settlement spread across the surrounding lands, the local jarls, driven by a thirst for power, began persistently seeking his favor. They showered him with generous offers, promising titles and vast domains, seeing him as a valuable figure in their strategic games. However, Torkel, whose heart had been tempered by the bitter experience of betrayal, rejected all their enticements. He no longer wished to be a docile instrument in others' hands as he had been before. He had found freedom, and that freedom was inextricably linked to the grandeur of the mountains, the icy breath of the winds, and the solitary silence of the forests. Worldly honors, resounding fame, and immense riches, which the jarls so generously offered, were alien to him. His sole desire was to find peace on his land, where the only sounds disturbing the silence would be the melody of the wind and the crisp whisper of snow underfoot. Ultimately, Torkel decided to retreat into the mountains, leaving behind the village fraught with the discords and political intrigues that threatened the fragile peace so dear to his heart. He understood that pirates might reappear on the horizon, that new enemies might emerge from nowhere, but the fear of death did not torment his soul. Death had been his longtime companion, a faithful shadow accompanying him since his first days of hunting in these harsh lands. However, perhaps Torkel's greatest enemy was not death itself, but the thought of his name being associated with the image of a hero he never aspired to be. He did not wish for songs to be sung about him or legends to be told. He dreamed of being forgotten, like a snowflake melting on the ground, leaving no trace behind. In the final years of his life, Torkel transformed into a mythical figure whose name was whispered by the northern winds. He passed away not in a brutal skirmish nor a great battle, but in the silence and peace he had so yearned for. Lore has it that before vanishing forever into the mountains, he left behind his bow, adorned with ancient runes, a symbol of the completion of his life's journey and his place among the gods. Those who knew him personally remembered his imperturbable calm, his ability to dissolve into snowstorms as if the very earth embraced him. And though the legend of Torkel was never consigned to complete oblivion, it became an integral part of stories told by crackling fires, in the quiet chants of bards, and in the reverent gazes of men and women who saw in him the true spirit of the frozen lands. He was a hunter, a man who sought no fame, but by defending what he loved, became an immortal symbol of silent resistance and courage in the shadow of war. Thus ended the earthly journey of the hunter of the frozen lands, not as a glorified warrior, but as a man who had grasped the true value of struggle, survival, and fragile peace. In his legacy, the northern winds continued to whisper his name, and the snow, which had always been loyal to him, continued to fall softly and steadily, like a quiet memory of Torkel, the hunter who became the silent soul of the frozen lands.